July 27, 2010. We're here at the Bayfield Heritage Association, 30 North Broad Street in Bayfield, and we're here to do this taped interview with some of the old Norwegian fishermen of this area and some of the grandchildren of those people and the sons of some of those people. So see to the left to right, we have Jimmy Edwards, who is the grandson of Olaf and Jenny Edwards. They're South Twin people, they're Rocky Island people, they're people in Bayfield, Norwegian people. We have also Jim Erickson, who is technically the grandson of Martin and Tina Erickson, the son of Ed and Nellie Hebert Erickson. He's a Bayfield commercial fisherman, and he was a part of a little bit of that Rocky Island experience and mainly fished out of the Bayfield area, but with strong heritage and ties towards Egersund, Norway. We have Julian Nelson, who's my dad. He's the senior member sitting at the table today. And his father and mother were John and Andrea Nelson from Egersund, Norway. She was, and John was from the island of Storbo. He's here to represent their family. We have Cliff Hadlin and Harvey Hadlin, who are the sons of Chris and Olga Hadlin, strong Norwegian descent. So Jim, tell us a little bit about yourself and your tie to your grandfather a little bit.
I'm the grandson of Olaf Edwards, actually the great-grandson of Jacob Johnson, who was over in Sand Island, but I don't know if he fished. He might have been just a fish dealer. We had fish docks here in Bayfield. My dad was a commercial fisherman until 1947, so I didn't actually follow in those footsteps of being a fisherman. Although as a young boy, 5, 6 years old, I worked with my grandfather when he was semi-retired, and so I had experience there. And then later on in life, I used to come and help Jimmy a little bit on the boat and help Amy Elverson on the boat. So I guess my forte is not really a fisherman, but a descendant of a fisherman who's gathered stories, family history, things of that sort. So,
your family's from Norway's been here since when, Jim?
1887 is when my grandfather migrated to Washburn. He tried farming over there for a little while with his sister. That didn't work out very well. And then he came to Bayfield and found jobs in Barker. He worked on that. The Booth Fisheries, I think that was Booth Fisheries in Barker.
Yeah.
Okay. We do know that he worked on that boat for a while. And then I think he's one of those Norwegian fishermen who Papa Booth bankrolled him with nets, and he built his own boats. And with that funding or that bankrolling, he got started in the business.
Tell us a little bit about Martin and Christina, why they came here.
Martin came from Norway, Egersund, for the turn of the century. He started fishing with hand line, the skiff, and he made enough money there to buy a box of gallnuts or something from Booth Fisheries. And he got a little skiff, and that's how he started out.
Mm-hmm.
And he just kept on making the thing a little bit bigger, a little more nets, a little more this and that. And he also worked for Booth Fisheries on their tugs. He also logged on Oak Island.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, he always talked about logging out there. When he got to town, he kept the guys out there kind of late in the season. When they got to town, they went bankrupt. So he worked all winter for $87. He never got that either. So, but he was a strong Norwegian. He never gave up.
Where was his hometown, Jim?
Egersund.
And where was Christina from?
Nelsonvik. And but he was a little town of Hadlin. Matter of fact, I think our name should have been Hadlin, and Martin changed his name to Erickson when he came to the United States.
Tell us a little bit about John and Andrea and your association there.
Well, in 1978, my wife and I made a trip to Norway, and we visited Egersund and Storbo, where my father was born. My mother was born in Egersund. And as usual, typical Americans that we were, we didn't spend enough time. We didn't ask enough questions. And that's one of the things that I would like to emphasize to the youth today, is to ask more questions and insist on answers. Well, anyway, Norway at that time, before the turn of the century, was a very destitute country. The children were confirmed in their church at the age of 14, and then they were thrown out. Get out and earn your own living. And this is what they did. My father went on a fishing boat. He was cooking on a fishing vessel in the North Sea. But of course, they heard the lure of this great country across the ocean. So they decided they wanted to try it. And they came. My father came in '97 in March, and he was met by an old friend here, Charlie Benson, who had a dog team. He took my father and his trunk. And how many here remember the sailing trunks, the ones with the round top?
Oh yeah, there was some around.
Yeah, yeah. And why were they round? So that they could not be stacked. Well, anyway, he was transported to Sand Island, where someone had arranged for him to go to work for Pete Hansen, who has definite footsteps and relatives and relations from Sand Island. He stayed there for a month, and then he came to Bayfield, and he also got involved in the Booth fishing operation. He worked on the tugs until 1909, when he was able to buy his own outfit. Well, I grew up in the Great Depression. Very few people remember that. But I went through high school during that time. And I was called out of school on several occasions to help out. And that is how I got started into the fishing business. It looked to me pretty good, because there was a good supply of fish then. And so I stuck with it, and I, not only because it looked good, but at that time, very few children had the opportunity to go to college. Very few. And this was in 1934. But by 1938, I had saved up $2,000. My father was 60-some years old then, and he wanted to get out of it, out of the business. I went to the bank, and I borrowed some more money, and I bought him out. So at 22, I owned his outfit. I continued to fish until the early 60s, when lack of fish just simply forced so many out.
Can you tell us a little bit about Olga and Chris Hadley? Or
Well, the reason our mother came over here, her sister was already here. Her twin sister was married to Linus Jacobson. And our father came over, his brother was already here, Tom Durden. So
They came together, actually,
who did?
Tom and.
I thought Tom was here already.
No, they came together in 1905.
Oh. But anyway, the story we heard, you were wondering why they came over here. These people were living on small pieces of land there. There wasn't a whole lot of land, and it was big families. And the oldest son inherited the farm. And our mother said, well, she could stay there and work on the farm, you know, for room and board. They didn't really kick you out or anything, but there was no point in staying there. And the only thing you could do was try to get out and find something. There's an opportunity to come over here, and so a lot of them came over here.
did she come in through Ellis Island that way? And
She did, yes.
so, how about Chris? Did he come through?
Came through Canada.
Came through Canada.
Yeah.
Why, I
So,
don't know.
so they must have met here in Bayfield. And what year did Chris get here anyway?
1905.
He come at 5, did she come about the same time, or did she come a little later?
Oh, no, she didn't come till 22.
So he'd been established here a few years.
Oh,
Did Chris Hadlin, did he just come right over here, and was he like a commercial fisherman from day one, or did he log, or
no,
did he do, what did he do when he first got here?
he worked on Sand Island with Herman Johnson.
Okay,
Yeah, he was there for a year or two, I guess. And then Tom and him moved to Outer Island.
and Tom Hadlin is also Tom Turnus.
Well, just, when he came here, there were so many Hadlins, I guess, there was a Tom Hadlin already.
There was a Tom Adler,
Yeah, so
Oldie's brother.
He changed his name to Dearness, which was the name of the district where he lived.
Yeah.
And I guess the earliest, I don't know, they were on Outer, I guess, from about 1908 or 9 till 1936, when Dearness died.
What was Chris Hadlin's name in Norway? Was it always Hadlin, or,
I guess so,
oh,
but it was spelled with an E in the middle,
Hadeland?
Hadeland. They just shortened it up.
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
But
So-
he was always into fishing, he never did any logging or anything like
It
that.
seems to me he said one time he logged 1 or 2 winters.
He might have in the wintertime, but he didn't fish under the ice.
So-
And he had a brother in St. Paul, older brother, that was a shoemaker. And I guess he went down there and, I don't know, he worked for him for a while. Because we had a bunch of shoemaking tools around.
Oh,
But I guess he got in an argument with him and his brother didn't get along. In fact, his brother came up here, that was in the 40s, came up from St. Paul to visit, and we were on the island, and they didn't come out on the boat, and he didn't go to town, so they never did meet. The women, they corresponded, but he didn't go to town to see his own brother at Helena.
how old were you when you learned to seam nets and slug nets? Were you just a kid?
Pretty small. We started to fill the needles first,
Yeah,
started to mend nets.
yeah,
And we used to mend them, those.
yeah.
Yeah, you start with a half mesh or a full mesh when you're mending nets. Trick question. When you're mending nets.
You start where there's 3.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be a half mesh.
Now, you can figure that out.
Yeah. That's for the new generation of net menders, so.
Yeah. And I was 8 years old when I was told that.
Yeah, you start with 3.
Yeah. And in order for my chair to reach, my legs to reach the chair, the floor from the chair, you had to cut the legs off because you moved the chair with like this,
Oh, what,
back and forth to the net.
so you
Well, we started up high and.
Yeah,
started at the farthest spot and worked towards yourself, eh?
yeah.
Yeah.
We had
So
oil
you-
corks too,
Huh?
We had oil corks too.
Oh, yeah.
Or linseed oil,
Yeah,
I don't know how much we got, it seemed like it was a nickel a day
yeah,
for oiling corks.
yeah,
The cork bin was still there when you got there.
yeah.
When I started mending nets and learning how to do it, I was reeling it up to this, but I never did much mending and stuff, but Martin did all that. One day he said to me, he said, you know, I'm not gonna be here forever, so you better start, better watch me, see what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I was about 16, 17 years old then, but I never did it when I was that young.
A lot of times in the spring of the year, Booth's Fish Tug would set nets for you. You know, like outside the islands,
Like both.
who would set for you, the Chinook or?
Well, a couple times once I had the Faithful from Howard Russell.
Okay.
Yeah, I used that, and then a couple times I used the remember the Seabird?
Yeah.
Yeah, I early in the point learned that.
So how many,
Learned that
how many boxes would you guys set in the spring of the year, in the older days now?
in the old,
with John and those guys, or how many would he set in the spring?
For who?
Well, how many boxes of gillnets would John Nelson set
Well,
in the spring?
he used 72, 6 12-box gangs.
Which would be about 72,000 feet of twine.
More gangs.
When I quit in the late 50s, or early 60s, I had 18 boxes in the gang.
And how many gangs did you have?
6.
6, so,
That was over 100,000 feet.
yeah, that, when you quit, that's
When
what,
I quit.
and that's what you needed to make a living in those days.
As the fish disappeared, the equipment grew more.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were lucky to get
Yeah.
18-box gang, I suppose. And you had 6 gangs in the lake,
Yeah.
and you couldn't lift them all in one
You
week.
never got around them every
No,
week.
No. And you could, I suppose you were lucky if you could get 600
Yeah.
after the,
Oh,
that was a big lift.
that was a big lift, yeah.
200 or 300.
I was 12 years old when he first took me on the boat. 12 years old.
Was just you and him, or?
No, there was another man with him then. But as soon as I got out of, as soon as I became 14, then he laid off his hired man, and I went with him as his hired man.
How many boxes of nets would you lift a day then?
Well, probably just 10 or 12.
Time would you leave Presqu'île in the morning?
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock.
He was up at 4 and made breakfast. Yeah, and you better eat, because that's the only way you could give him a good day's work.
Yeah, there was no,
Yeah.
there was no shenanigans out there.
No,
So you'd leave at 5, you'd be at the buoy
well,
7?
it depended on where we were, but at that time, probably the furthest run was 2.5 hours.
Yeah, in an 8-mile-an-hour boat
In an 8-mile-an-hour.
from Stockton Island.
Yeah.
How about your dad, Cliff and Mom? Did they cook the big breakfast for you guys in the morning, that type of thing? Or did you have to fill your own lunch pails and go, or what?
She made up the pails.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We used to have one lunch pail for the 3 of us. Big metal with a cover on it, full of sandwiches,
Yeah.
and stuff. Thermos bottles.
Yeah, from the spot. Yeah, we all made our own lunch.
Oh,
Yeah.
time would you get back in the afternoon?
yeah. Oh, yeah. 2, 3 o'clock. Sometimes the boat had to wait for you, you didn't get in until kind of late, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock maybe.
Yeah.
So like the Apostle Islands, or the C.W. Turner would wait for you guys to come in with that load of fish
Yeah.
that day?
In the spring they would, but in the summer, a lot of times they wouldn't, because they had passengers.
Passengers, yeah.
They
So-
leave some ice in it.
Yeah. But we were usually in by 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you'd have to load the Turner, and ice fish and stuff like that.
You know, they were the crew on the Turner, they were the Apostle, they would help you take the fish out of the boat,
Yeah.
and they'd weigh them up.
Tell us about those glorious days at Stockton Island
Well-
in Julian Bay.
Well, my father had moved to Stockton in 1908, fall of 1918, and then he fished with another old man, Ludwigson, in 19, when they fished off of one boat. And at that time, much, not all of it, but especially the southeast bank was practically virgin ground, because the tugs had never touched, they didn't know what to do with that fat fish.
No.
And it wasn't until the early 20s, when Booth discovered a market down in St. Louis, that would take fat fish, and there was fat fish, you know, like you wouldn't believe in the southeast bank. But you had to get out deep, from 60 fathom and out.
Dad, what did they do with them fish in St. Louis?
I
Did they
don't know.
smoke them, or?
They probably hadn't heard of the lean Lake Superior trout.
So they sold them as
But
big trout?
this was in the 20s,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, today if you
But-
put any of them on a plate, they fry away to nothing, they're so oily.
If you're hungry enough though, you'd really go for them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Didn't they, when they, a lot of them went for saltfish
yeah,
in the.
In the kegs?
In the coal mines.
yeah,
Oh, in the coal mines too.
They salted them big things. like-
yeah. that's
So
right.
when the fat trout market started right around 1920 then, 1921?
Mhm.
So it was all lean trout before then, which is the,
Primarily, mostly lean, what they call the Mackinaw.
yeah. So, well, give me one of your ranges outside of Michigan Island there.
One of my ranges,
Yeah.
well, one of the ranges is Oak Island.
Mhm.
And it's used because Oak Island is the tallest of the, highest of the islands.
Mhm.
And when we had the high hump on Oak Island over the clearing on Stockton, the clearing was where they had logged.
Mhm.
And that was used primarily as the range.
Mhm.
But my father ran for 4 hours, one way with that 30-foot practically open boat, east-northeast from Stockton to reach that fat fish, which was in the latter part of the summer.
Yeah, in August.
Yeah, July and August.
How deep water are you in now?
Well, the deepest he found it, when he sounded by hand, was 95 fathom.
He was in Michigan then.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
but long
That's what I
way,
got thought.
long ways into Michigan water then. Yeah, we're practically off of the Porcupine Mountains.
How big were the fats in them days, Dad?
Fat, well, some of them were darn near as wide as they were long. You can't believe how some of them fats were. And if you didn't gaff them in the tail, the gaff wouldn't hold.
They're that fat.
You had to gaff them in the tail.
What size mesh did you use down there?
Well, that was just a 4 1/4 inch mesh that they used at that time.
Just to catch them in the
Now,
teeth.
think what they would have gotten if they'd had a net like they got today. You would have had to lift on one night.
Yeah.
You know, when we were fishing down below Michigan there toward the end, this was in the late 80s before we quit.
Yeah,
We had some old 20 mesh nylon, you know.
Yeah.
That was considered damn good twine.
yeah,
And then we put that on the end for
Yeah.
the slack, you know, they had
Yeah,
cotton
sure.
meters, and if we got a bad knot, we just cut it off and
sure.
tie it together again, and we had the 30 mesh mono in the middle of the gang. And when you
Yeah.
got on that nylon that was so wonderful years back, it was almost like you were in a different lake, there wasn't 1/4 of the fish on.
That's right.
And you didn't get all them big fats either, like
No.
you did in the monofilm.
It must have bounced right off them or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Cliff, when you guys, what range did you use up on the north end of Outer Island in that? Did you use ranges up there and?
Well, to start with, we used to run out with Cat Island just showing on the north end of Outer.
Yeah,
That was a good tight range.
yeah,
And then you could run on that, you could go out there an hour and a half or so, and you get, with the Vagabond, you could make it an hour and a half, you'd get about 68, 9 fathom. We used to start there in the spring and set about, 15, 18,000 feet of net.
Mhm.
And then you get down, I don't know what the depth was on the outside, maybe around 80 fathom.
80, 90.
yeah,
And then, of course, you were on that clay bottom when you were out there.
yeah.
Pretty clean bottom.
Yeah, and
For the
it
most
was
part.
that white clay or gray.
Yeah, white, gray.
And then as it got later on toward July, you had to keep moving out, because the fish kept going deeper.
Yeah,
But then we found out that when you got way out and there wasn't quite as many, you get the hell out of there. And then you moved in on that third bank, about 50 minutes from the light, and set shorter gangs there. The last year we were there, we had to cut down to about 8,000, 9,000 feet, and we had to lift on 3 nights in August. They were coming so damn heavy, you couldn't hardly handle them, just the two of us. We had a ton the last time we were there, the smaller fats.
Oh, yeah.
And so we said, let's get the hell out of here, it's too hard, and the weather was getting bad. So then we went down below Michigan and set there, it's a lot shorter run.
Yeah.
I used to use the lake and the trees.
yeah,
That's a arrangement,
And the light up in the trees,
yeah,
that's quite a way south.
yes, yes.
Oh,
the way through, and then right on the west side of the.
Well, the trees behind the light.
Yeah, behind the light.
Yeah, right, just behind the lake, just so